This is the AWS News Desk, live from Seattle, with your host, Rudy Chetty.
Today on the show, we're beginning our wrap-up of this year's event. We'll tell you who won this year's Deep Racer Championship, plus highlight some customers in the world of banking. But first, more than 500,000 people have tuned into reInvent programming this year. There have been dozens of launches and dozens of customers sharing their experiences with building on the cloud. You've probably heard that it's a year like no other, a dozen times. And well, it is. While this conference is always called reInvent, the year for reinvention has really been 2020. AWS CEO Andy Jassy offered his 8 keys for how to successfully reinvent a business. We've compiled an abridged version for you. Let's take a look.
If you're going to be a leader that's going to reinvent, you have got to be maniacal and relentless and tenacious about getting to the truth. You have to know what competitors are doing in your space. You have to know what your customers think about your product and where you sit, relatively speaking. You have to know what's working and what's not working. And then when you realize that there's something you have to reinvent and change, you have to have the courage to pick the company up and force them to change and move. And part of that is sometimes acknowledging that you can't fight gravity. You've got to realize that if something's going to happen, it is going to happen regardless whether you want it to or not. You're much better off cannibalizing yourself than having someone do it to you and chasing it. The third thing you got to make sure of is that you have talent that's hungry to invent. Now this seems fairly obvious. Everybody says, I have talent that wants to invent, but it's not always true. And you have to make sure that you've got builders who are curious about learning, who are excited about leaning forward and inventing and reinventing their customer experience. Now, you want builders and talent that's hungry to invent, but you want to make sure you guard against the opposite, which is that you have people who actually solve problems that you want people to solve problems for customers as opposed to solving problems because they like the technology and they think it's cool. The fifth thing is speed. Speed disproportionately matters at every stage of your business and in every sized company. Speed is not preordained. Speed is a choice. You can make this choice, and you've got to set up a culture that has urgency and that actually wants to experiment. Because you can't flip a switch and suddenly get speed. It doesn't work like that. You've got to build muscle to get speed. You've got to be doing it all the time. Now, one of the enemies of speed is complexity. And you have to make sure that you don't over-complexify what you're doing. One of the ways to help you avoid some of that complexity is making sure that you use the platform that has the most capabilities and the broadest set of tools. The 8th key is something that really wraps all of this together, which is that the leadership team has to build aggressive top-down goals that force the organization to move faster than it organically otherwise would. Setting an aggressive top-down goal forces the organization to understand that they are not going to be able to dip their toe in the water for a number of years, that you mean business and you're going to make this change. And setting up the right mechanisms to inspect whether you're getting the right progress, and if not, getting the issues on the table so you can solve them is really important.
Strong leadership is what has propelled AWS customers to be successful. One key vertical that's highly regulated, complex, and traditionally full of technical debt is financial services. But we know that banking customers don't care about all that. They want easy-to-use applications that are available from anywhere. With more on how the industry is banking on the cloud, we go to reporter Ellie Flicker in DC.
AWS financial services customers vary in size from fintech startups to global systemically important banks. They operate in every industry segment, such as asset management, banking, capital markets, and insurance. And the use cases are across the board.
Usually when people ask me, I say that after we moved to the cloud, I started to sleep at night.
The CEO of North Mill Bank, which operates in the Nordics and Poland, notes the security and time to market were some of the big advantages for the neobank to move to AWS from its on-premises environment in 2013.
And we have come far in our use of serverless technology, which has really decimated kind of our maintenance burden. So basically, we can go live with products like 3 times faster than we used to do before.
Northmill says moving to the cloud has allowed its development teams to spend 90% of their time focused on building new products. This year alone, they release 8. But Northmill isn't the only institution picking AWS. At the start of reInvent, Itaú Unibanco announced that AWS is now its long-term strategic cloud provider. Latin America's largest bank will move the majority of its IT infrastructure off mainframes and out of its on-premises data center to the cloud. A few weeks ago, Standard Chartered out of the UK also announced it was using AWS to drive its digital transformation and deliver new personalized banking services in the 60 markets it operates worldwide. Across the world, financial institutions are at different stages of cloud adoption, and the industry has seen big moves in the last 5 years. In 2015, at reInvent, the Capital One CIO took to the stage to announce that they were well on their way to moving into the AWS cloud. Last month, Capital One announced that it had closed its last on-premises data center. Capital One has become the first U.S. bank to be all in on AWS. In all, it built more than 1,600 applications from the ground up on the cloud, and along the way grew its tech team to more than 11,000 people. In DC, I'm Allie Flicker.
AWS CEO Andy Jassy offered 8 keys to unlock the power of reinvention, and they take strong will from leadership and a top-down approach. Our next guest knows what's needed. Phil Potloff is a seasoned CIO, COO, and CDO who himself has been at the heart of major reinventions. In 2017, he took a role with AWS, heading up the enterprise strategy team. He now leads a team of former CIOs and CTOs that have all led a technology transformation using the cloud, all to help other organizations realize their potential. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Thanks, Rudy. Good to be here.
Let's start with the realities of COVID-19. Some organizations may be pulling back IT spend now given all the uncertainty globally. But we heard from Southwest Airlines a few days ago, I should say, who said they're moving ahead with transforming their tech footprint. What's your sentiment on the current climate?
Well, Rudy, I think 2 changes stand out the most for me when we compare the conversations that our team is having with enterprises year over year that are the result of COVID. And the first is that during the early days of the lockdowns and travel restrictions, companies made a lot of quick and bold decisions and operated with tremendous urgency in responding to their customers and establishing remote work capabilities for their employees. And it was an eye-opener for many organizations where the decisions that had historically seemed aggressive became normalized. So one of the post-mortem type discussions our team is having is how do you use the cloud to establish a permanent operating model that maintains the ability to make quick decisions and act on them without sacrificing their governance obligations? And the second change is that our team spends much of its time with enterprise leaders whose companies are in the early stages of cloud adoption. And what would normally be in or out of scope for their near-term cloud migration has definitely changed in the last year. A year ago, a lot of these companies had planned to keep their core business systems out of scope, at least for now, while they experimented and built a foundation of experience. But that's really changed. And now you see customers wanting to go deep into their core applications to provide more scalability and security. And also what's transpired this year and is now a priority, not just to cut costs, but align their costs with revenue.
Let's talk about how you work with customers such as Nationwide. What prompted this leader in the insurance industry to take on such a broad transformation initiative?
Nationwide is, as you know, is a Fortune 100 insurance and financial services provider. And their transformation is really focused on delivering deeper insights for their independent agents and improve personalized recommendations for their millions of customers. And as part of this effort, they're moving more than 850 business and customer applications to AWS. and accelerate that, they're taking advantage of a really awesome program called Enterprise Next. And Enterprise Next was developed in response to our large customers asking us for ongoing involvement and support in their customer transformations, not just with app migrations, but with AWS teams, partner teams, and the nationwide team in this case, working together in cross-functional groups to modernize their applications and their operating practices.
Are there any key learnings that organizations should consider to help them ride out the bumps in their cloud journey?
Yeah, well, there's certainly, the key drivers of successful migrations include things like a top-down mandate and a commitment to reskilling the company, the organization, and the teams. But every company situation is unique. And I've had a couple of personal learnings that seem to have helped other CIOs with how they think about their cloud migrations. And the first is actually taken from an Amazon philosophy of being stubborn on your vision, but flexible on the details. And the principle here is individual and team empowerment. Migrations do get, and I've seen migrations get stalled when the focus of the senior leaders is not always on the cloud migration, and they have other responsibilities as executives, and so teams end up relying too heavily on step-by-step instructions from their leaders. So having a firm vision and a clear set of objectives, whether it's migrating 50 applications in 3 months, or timing your data center migrations with their lease expirations like I did at Edmunds, but empowering the team to make decisions and adjustments to their actual implementation, provided they still track with that vision that you've set, and the goals will keep things from stalling out. And the second is really just changing the mindset of the organization from a project-based approach, which has defined starts and ends, to one of continuous optimization, where those 50 applications that were migrated continue to be refactored indefinitely for improved performance, efficiency, and resiliency, and preventing tech debt from accumulating. My former company, Edmunds, we started moving to the cloud in 2013 at scale. And 7 years later, they're still finding value from optimizing that infrastructure, reducing costs, and improving their resilience.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
Thanks, Rudy, for sure. Take care.
That was Phil Potloff, Head of Enterprise Strategy at AWS. Speaking of strategy, a lot goes into the development process at AWS, especially for its chip designs. There are dozens of instance types for Amazon EC2. In the last few years, the company has released some mighty computer power made possible by the AWS Nitro system. Reporter Rob Munoz has more.
But chips are only part of this story. What's really exciting and transformative about deep investments in AWS silicon is being able to work across custom hardware and software to deliver unique capabilities.
AWS has a long history of building custom hardware, but its custom silicon work started around 2014 with Annapurna Labs. AWS ended up acquiring the chip maker, who have been turning out new Nitro chips for years.
Today, we're on our 4th generation of custom Nitro chips, and each generation of Nitro chip has enabled improved performance. The most recent generation of our Nitro chip is powering the recently announced C6GN instance. The C6GN is our highest performing network optimized EC2 instance. It's specifically designed for the most demanding network workloads, including high performance computing.
In fact, those Nitro chips create specialized hardware, which is called the Nitro controller. Now that might sound really in the weeds, but this transformational AWS Nitro system is actually what allows AWS to be so innovative, including with its Graviton 2 instances.
With Graviton 2, we set out to design the best performing general purpose processor. And while we wanted the best absolute performance, we also wanted the lowest cost, faster and less expensive. Having lofty goals for multi-$100 million project like a new chip isn't unusual. What's unusual is exceeding these goals. Graviton 2 is the best performing general purpose processor in our cloud by a wide margin.
Not only are they more cost efficient, they are also more power efficient. The AWS Nitro system offloads traditional hypervisor functions to dedicated hardware and software, delivering practically all compute and memory resources to your EC2 instances.
In fact, Graviton 2 processors provide 2 to 3.5 times better performance per watt or energy use than any other AWS processor. This is a remarkable improvement in power efficiency. With the world's increasing need for compute and other IT infrastructures, innovations like these are going to be critical to assuring that we can sustainably power the workloads of the future.
Improvements to chip designs and how they are put to use are just as important to AWS consumers looking for performance for their applications. But the environmental footprint also weighs in. It's said the greenest energy is the energy we don't use. In Seattle, I'm Rob Munoz.
From tiny chips to tiny cars, the 2020 Deep Racer champion has been decided.
The AWS Deep Racer League is proud to present the 2020 Championship Cup to our winner, Po Chun. Congratulations on an amazing season and a fantastic final race.
It started with more than 100 developers taking part in knockout rounds, and then a field of 32 in head-to-head races. And yesterday, 8 racers took to the starting line. In the end, a close call. With only 3 car lengths left to go, racer Duckworth from Norway careened off course. Po Chun from Taiwan slid in, becoming the 2020 Deep Racer League champion. As a grand prize, Po Chun gets $10,000 in AWS promotional credits and an all-expenses-paid trip to an F1 Grand Prix. Congratulations, Po Chun. Tomorrow, we'll close out the reInvent version of AWS News Desk with some surprises, including some predictions for the year ahead. Thanks for watching. I'm Rudy Chetty, AWS News Desk, signing out.